Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Overstreet, and I'm an Assistant Director of the Transfer Opportunity Program for UC Davis undergraduate admissions. We are recording today's session, so this will be available on our YouTube channel. And then I do have some of our student outreach ambassadors here with me today, and they are in the Q&A, so they will be answering questions for you as we go. So please feel free to post questions in the Q&A throughout the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. So today's session is UC Davis Transfer Admission Guarantee. So the UC Davis tag is what we're going to be talking about. And let's just go over some terminologies as we get started. These are terms that will come up throughout your time as you're planning to transfer. So UC TAP. UC TAP is the UC Transfer Admission Planner. UC TAG stands for UC Transfer Admission Guarantee. And then different UCs have different terms that we use for this. So specific majors that have requirements that students have to meet for the major before transfer. So certain coursework that you have to take and GPA requirements that need to be met. Those majors are called things like selective majors, capped majors, screening majors, high demand majors. At UCD, we call them selective majors, but because we call them different things, just know that it all means the same thing. So it means if you're applying to one of those majors, that you have to meet those major specific requirements before you transfer. And then articulation agreement. So what an articulation agreement is it's a formal agreement between two institutions of higher education to determine equivalent courses. So for example, the website Assist, this you can use to find the articulation agreements from community college to the CSU system and the UC system. So that website is going to tell you what coursework transfers to UC and CSU, and also what coursework meets the specific courses at each campus by major. So now let's move on to discuss the UC Transfer Admission Planner. This is a tool that I highly recommend all of you fill out. The earlier, the better. So don't wait until you're planning to do the tag to fill this out. You can start filling it out at the very beginning when you start to attend community college, because it's not just for tag, it's a really helpful resource for you to plan your transfer coursework. So this is for students who want to transfer to the UC system. In here, you enter all of your college coursework, and then it helps you to track all of that information. We at the UCs have access to this, so we can help you with your planning. And then if you're going to do a tag, the UC TAP becomes the tag application. So this houses the application. This is where you submit the application. So if you are going to do a tag, you do have to fill out this UC TAP. So here are some benefits of having a UC tab. It helps you track your progress for transfer. So in here, you can see, what courses transfer to UC from California Community College. It tracks units, also the 7-course pattern, which we'll go over that in just a little bit, and also your GPA. And it allows us to communicate with you as well. So if you have a UC Transfer Planner and you indicate interest in our campus, then we'll be able to reach out to you about different types of things that we have going on to help you with the transfer process. If you make an appointment with us, we do require that you have this filled out. That way we can review your academic information and help you. So we can see, okay, everything looks good. You have a good transfer plan in place. Or maybe perhaps you need to add some specific classes for your major, or maybe you're not tracking for that specific major and we should think about changing to a different one. So these are all conversations that you can have as you're preparing to transfer if you fill this out in advance and are planning ahead of time. This is where you do submit your tag application. So time to do that is in September. So when you're ready to actually submit the tag, then you can go into the UC Tap and submit everything. You want to make sure it's all fully filled out when you submit it. And then even for students who do a tag, you still have to submit a UC application as part of the process. And so you're able to import everything from your UC Tap into the UC application, which is a separate system. So then you won't have to refill out that portion of the coursework. So if you haven't already done so, please do create a UC Tap account. So you'll want to navigate to the UC Tap website and then click on Create an Account Now. Make sure that when you're filling this out, you have all of your transcripts in front of you. So all college transcripts, you need to make sure that you're reporting everything from every single college that you've attended in here. And you want to go from your transcripts. So don't try to go off of memory. Make sure that you're working off of the transcripts so that it ensures accuracy. So once you've created your account, when you go into it, this is what your home page is going to look like. And you can navigate either using the menu at the top, and then you can click on the various drop-down menus from there, or there's also a menu on the right-hand side that you can use as well. You want to make sure that you're going through every single section and filling out all parts of the UC Tap. But you can see here, if we're navigating from the top, we're going to have that About Me section first. Then it's going to be your academic history, transfer plan, messages, and you can also do a record review as well. Or you can navigate from this sidebar, and you can see here with the arrows, these are all of the primary sections. So that About Me, my academic history, my transfer plan, messages, and record review. That's all there, and then the subsections. So make sure you're going through all of this in detail and filling everything out. So when you get to the schools attended portion, you want to make sure to include your high schools. So every single high school you've attended, along with dates of attendance need to be in here. And then also all colleges attended. So every single college, even if you just maybe took one class there, that would need to be included. Also, if you took classes maybe at a four-year institution or internationally, out of state, any of that, everything needs to go in here, not just community college. Something else that we will see a lot, an error that students make, is maybe they attend a district of community colleges and they enter all their coursework under their primary school, but they've actually attended multiple schools within the district. So if you've attended multiple schools within a district, you need to indicate each individual school that you've attended. So every single college, everything that's on your transcripts needs to go in here. As far as the dates of attendance are concerned, you put when you very first took a class there, and then when you plan to stop taking classes there. So, for example, sometimes students might take some college coursework while they're in high school. If that's the case, your starting date of attendance is going to be when you took that very first class, even if you were still in high school. And then the ending date, if you haven't finished taking classes there, would be when you plan to end. So let's say you're planning to apply for fall 27 and you're going to be taking classes through spring of 27. Then your end date would be, through May or June of 27. It'll ask you some follow-up information after you enter your school information, so just be sure to fill out that follow-up information as well. One of the questions is, after high school graduation, has there been a time when you were not enrolled in a college or university for one or more terms? This means a regular term, so not including summer, but if fall, winter, or spring, you weren't enrolled, even if it's just one term after high school, you still need to indicate yes. And then explain what you were doing during that time. It's not a value judgment as to what you were doing when you weren't in school. It just needs to be clear to us that you weren't actually enrolled in another school that you forgot to report in here. So you would just want to indicate, I was taking time off for myself or working or whatever it was, but I was not enrolled in school at this time. So it's really helpful if you actually specifically state you were not enrolled in school. So as we get to the coursework section, this is where you need to have your transcripts. So have unofficial transcripts in front of you for filling out all of this and make sure that everything matches your transcripts exactly. So you need to report everything just as it appears on the transcript. So, for example, if you got a grade of W, you would report that. If you took a class more than once, you repeated that class, you need to report each instance that you took the class. Also, if you received academic renewal, you would report that in here as well. So really important that you report everything as it appears on the transcripts, as well as any classes that are in progress and also planned. So a big mistake that we often see in students' tag applications is that they don't report their in progress and or planned coursework. So we need to see everything through your whole plan to see that you're going to be meeting our requirements. So if you're going to be applying for like a fall 27 tag, for instance, you need to have all of your grades reported through this summer, what you're taking this fall, and then what you plan to take in the spring. We know you haven't actually signed up for those classes yet, but you do need to report what your plan is. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to approve that tag. So make sure that it's fully filled out. Next, we have exams. If you haven't taken any AP or IB exams, then you don't need to worry about this section. But if you do have AP and or IB exams, then this is where you report them. And you want to make sure that you report all of your exams here. And exams for AP that you received a 3 or better, you might be able to receive credit for specific courses, depending on the campus, which courses that might meet. Also, 7-course pattern, it might cover those, or it might just be general units. IB exams, if you received a 5 or higher, same thing. The only difference is IB cannot cover the English composition requirement. And that's specifically for those higher level exams, 5s or better. As you're filling out this section for exams, you can just use the search function to pull up the exam and then select it from the drop-down menu. Okay, so now let's talk about the minimum admission requirements for the UC system. Now, these are minimum requirements to transfer. These are not tag requirements. These are just minimal requirements for consideration. And what we're looking for is for students to transfer in at the junior level, typically. So that's 60 transferable semester units or 90 quarter units. Sometimes some campuses may allow students to apply before they reach junior standing for some majors, but if you want to be able to be eligible for all campuses and all majors, you want to reach that junior standing. Also, minimum GPA for the UC system is a 2.4, but do keep in mind that some campuses have higher GPAs. So it's, a 2.4 for California residents, 2.8 for non-California resident. But, Davis, for example, is a campus that has a higher minimum GPA. So our overall minimum GPA for our non-engineering applicants is 2.8. And then it's a 3.1 for engineering applicants. So just something to keep in mind. As part of your 60 units, you do need to have what we call the 7-course pattern. 7-course pattern is 2 transferable courses in English composition, 1 in math, and then 4 courses from at least 2 of 3 other areas. So those are the arts and humanities, the social and behavioral sciences, and the physical and biological sciences. Then depending on major that you choose, so if you choose one of those majors that we've referred to as a selective major, then you're going to have additional requirements that are major specific that you have to complete as well, and certain GPA that you need to meet for those major specific courses. All of these minimum requirements need to be completed by the end of the spring prior to a fall transfer. So you don't have summer right before you transfer to finish up things that are minimum requirements. So now let's transition to talking about the UC transfer admission guarantee. So TAG for the UC system. There are 6 campuses that offer a TAG, and that is Riverside, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, Irvine, Merced, and Davis. TAG is something you can apply for a year before you plan to transfer. So the time to apply for TAG is September, anytime between September 1st and the 30th. And what TAG is it's a contract that says if you meet this specific criteria, you are guaranteed admission to this campus. And so it is a true guarantee as long as you fulfill everything that is required. You can only have a TAG for one UC campus, but you can still apply through the regular process to any of the campuses that you like. So TAG is an obligation on the campus that you tag to have a place for you if you meet their TAG requirements. But it's not an obligation that you have to them. So ultimately, you can go anywhere that you're admitted. And this is specifically for students who are transferring from California Community College. So here's some overall UC-wide TAG eligibility information. We do require that a student meets the definition of a California Community College student. And what that means is that you have at least of your total transfer units, at least 30 semester or 45 quarter come from California Community College. So it is okay if you've attended other schools outside of the California Community College system, but at least 30 semester or 45 quarter units have to be California Community College that are transferable. And also the last school you attend in a regular term, so that's fall, winter, spring, must also be California Community College only. So you can't be cross-enrolled outside of the California Community College in that last term prior to transfer. So you have to be coming directly from California Community College. Fine if you're going to multiple California community colleges, that's not an issue, but it has to be a direct transfer from CCC to UC for TAG. You do need to meet the TAG criteria for the overall UC system in addition to the specific campus TAG criteria for the one that you're applying to. And sometimes students may not meet the criteria for TAG, but they may still be very competitive for the regular application process. So if you find that you're not meeting TAG criteria, don't let that discourage you. You can still apply through the regular process, and you may be a competitive applicant in that way. So students who are not eligible for TAG, those are students who already have a bachelor's degree, a graduate degree, or professional degree. So if you already have one of those degrees, you are not eligible to apply for a TAG. If you've been previously enrolled at a UC campus during a regular term and wish to return to that same campus, you can't tag that one. So for example, let's say you want to tag Davis, but at some point in the process, you previously attended UC Santa Cruz. That's fine. You could still tag Davis, but you couldn't have previously been a UC Davis student and tag Davis. Then you actually need to apply through a different process that's called readmission. Also, if you've previously attended any UC campus and you were not in good standing with them when you left, then you cannot do a tag. TAG is also not available for students who are concurrently enrolled in high school. So sometimes students are dual enrollment. Those students can't do the TAG. Even if you are graduating in December, if in September, when it's time to submit that TAG, you are still in high school, then you cannot do the TAG. So just some additional important notes about TAG. I did mention this before, but you can only tag for one campus. So TAG is just for one, but you can still apply to as many as you want through the regular process. Tag does have to be submitted during the filing period, so that is the month of September. So anytime from September 1st through the 30th, a year before you plan to transfer, is the time to tag. In addition to submitting the tag application, you still have to also submit the UC application. That is a required step in the process. And it has to include the campus you tagged to, and the major has to match. So if you do not include the campus you tagged to on your UC application in the same major, then you are not going to have a valid tag. So make sure that you do that step. And then some campuses do a tag pre-evaluation, which means that we review your tag application in advance. So UC Davis is one of those campuses that does the pre-evaluation. So you submit your tag in September, we will review it. We'll let you know if it's approved, and you're going to find out from us about that in mid-November. For the campuses that do a pre-evaluation, we do want you to wait to submit your UC application until you hear back from us about your tag decision. And the reason for that is that we give you really specific information on next steps and what needs to be done. And we want you to be aware of that before submitting your UC application in case you need to make any changes. So I don't recommend waiting until you hear back from us to start your UC application. You can start it in advance. You can start it even as early as August, have everything filled out and ready to go, but just wait to submit if you're submitting a tag to us so that you hear back from us first. Also, another step, and this is for tag and non-tag students, you have to submit what's called the Transfer Academic Update. We refer to this as the TAU. TAU is when you log back into the UC application again, and you provide us with your fall grades and let us know if you've changed any of your plans for spring. So this happens in January. It's going to be due by the end of January. Make sure that you follow through with that step, and that way we can track everything to make sure you're still meeting that criteria. And ultimately, you'll still need to meet the conditions of your tag. So throughout the classes that you're taking, throughout the academic year, you need to still be meeting those requirements in order for that tag to remain valid. This QR code will take you to the UC tag matrix. This is a really helpful document that has information on all of the tag campuses, what their criteria are, and then links to, the more detailed information on their tag criteria. So, if you're still thinking about which campus you want to tag and you want to do an overview of all the different tag campuses and what's available, I highly encourage you to check out this particular document for an overview. Okay, so now let's move on to talking about specifically UC Davis tag criteria. So we offer tag for all of our majors except for computer science, data science, and business. You can still apply through the regular process for any of those majors, but you cannot tag if you are applying to one of those majors. In order to qualify for a tag, you have to have at least 30 UC transferable semester units or 45 quarter units done by the end of summer prior to submitting the tag. So for those of you who are planning to apply for a fall 27 tag, that means by the end of this summer term, you have to have at least 30 transferable semester units or 45 transferable quarter units. You also need to complete at least 60 transferable semester units or 90 quarter units by the end of spring. So your plan needs to show that you're going to be completing those by the end of the spring. And within those units, if you've attended multiple types of institutions, at least 30 of the semester or 45 quarter units have to come from California Community College. It can be from multiple California community colleges, but at least that many need to be CCC. And also the last school that you attend has to be CCC only in a regular session. So if your last term is spring, that would be the last regular term. In your last term, we also require that you complete no more than 19 UC transferable units to meet that junior standing. So you need to be pacing yourself along the way so that you're not just piling everything up at the end. So for TAG, the UC Davis GPA requirement for our non-engineering majors is 3.2. That needs to be met by the time you submit the tag. So if you are applying for a fall 27 tag, that means by the end of this summer, you must have a UC transferable GPA of at least 3.2. If you're applying for an engineering major, then you need to have at least a 3.5. In addition to that, anything that's a selective major will also need to meet the selective major GPA requirements at the time that you submit the tag. And also for engineering specifically, all of the engineering majors have the same selective major GPA, which is 3.5. So it's 3.5 overall, and then also 3.5 within the coursework for those engineering majors. And all of the courses that are for the major need to be complete with grades no less than C. After submitting the tag, you need to continue to meet the GPA requirements for tag, fulfill any of the coursework that you still have left to do with no grades less than C. So as far as the 7-course pattern goes, there is some specific timing that needs to be met for that for tag. So for your English courses, it's that your first English needs to be done no later than the end of fall prior to transfer, and second one done no later than the end of spring prior to transfer. Usually this isn't an issue and comes naturally for most students, but sometimes students are on a quarter system and then maybe they would be starting that first English in the winter and finishing the second one in the spring. That's too late. So it has to be first one no later than fall, second one no later than spring. For math, it's also a little bit earlier than for regular admission consideration. You do have to have your first UC transferable math course done no later than the end of fall prior to transfer. So you don't have that spring to get that first math course done. Now, if you have additional math that's needed for your major, that's fine. You have till the end of spring to do that. But that first UCM course has to be no later than the fall. The rest of the 7-course pattern, that can all be completed by the end of the spring. So just to reiterate, this is kind of the same, I think, information that we did share for the UC system, but students who are not eligible for UC Davis tag are those that are concurrently enrolled in high school, those who have already earned a bachelor's degree, graduate degree, or professional degree, those who were previously enrolled in a UC campus and when they left, they were not in good standing, and those who are previously enrolled at UC Davis. So if you happen to be a student who's a former UC Davis student and wants to come back, you need to go through a process, application process called readmission. You can contact the registrar's office specifically about that process and how to go about that, because it's a different application process than TAG or just the UC application. You might still qualify for regular admission, even if you're not eligible for TAG. So do keep that in mind. TAG is not the be all end all. You may be able to qualify through the regular process. So don't let it discourage you if you're not meeting some of this criteria. So for the selective major requirements, the GPA for the courses has to be met in the ones that you've already completed at the time you submit the tag. And then you need to continue to finish up that coursework if you haven't already done so and continue to meet those selective major GPA throughout your time before you transfer. So just keep in mind, initially it does have to be met even if you haven't completed all of the coursework yet. So let's go over what the selective majors are. We do have a QR code here for you that it will take you to our selective majors page so that you can see the list of all the selective majors and the links to what their requirements are. So I do encourage you to check that out and so you can review that. But within the College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences, we have several majors that are selective. A few that I want to point out specifically are just becoming selective for students who are applying for fall 27. So animal biology is going to be selective now. So is animal science, as well as wildlife, fish, and conservation biology. All majors in the College of Biological Sciences are selective. They actually all have identical criteria, where majors outside of College of Biological Sciences have different criteria depending on the major. College of Engineering are also all selective, but computer science specifically is not available for tag. It is a selective major, but not a tag major. Within the College of Letters and Science, we do have several majors that are selective as well. So here is the list of all of those. Data science is the only one that's not available for tag. So that again is a selective major, but not a tag major. And then the Graduate School of Management houses our business major. This is an undergraduate major that you can apply to through the regular process. It is selective. So this is just first becoming available for transfer students for this fall 27 application cycle, but it's not tag. So just some other important information about tag. Just to reiterate, really important that you report all of your college coursework. You are required to include everything, even if you don't think the coursework is transferable, even if maybe you changed your major along the way and you don't want to apply those units, you still need to report it all regardless. And that includes international coursework. So if you've attended school internationally, that needs to be reported as well. We do have some unit limitations for tag, and that really only applies if you have attended a four-year university. If you've only attended community college, then this does not apply to you. But if you have attended a four-year institution and you reach that unit limitation, then you're not going to be eligible for tag. The way that we calculate this is a little bit complex. It's not just straight units, and that's that. That we do apply certain rules to what we take and what we don't take, and how we decide how much we'll give you for lower division units, for example. So I do highly encourage you, if you are in this situation, just to reach out if you think you have too many units, and that way we can help you to determine if that's actually the case or if you can still apply. But if you've never attended a four-year institution, you can have 1,000 units, and that's fine. You can still apply for a tag. So as you're trying to find out, exactly what you need to do for your major, I encourage you to first look at that selective majors page to see what the requirements are, and then cross-reference that on Assist if you've attended community college. So if you've attended a California community college, you can go to the Assist website, look up the school that you're at, transferring to Davis, and then your major, and it'll show you all of the lower division coursework and its equivalents at your school for the major. What's specifically required for admission is what is on our selective majors page, but Assist will include everything even beyond what's an admission requirement. It's good to do as much as you can on Assist, because that will mean less you need after transfer, but you need to make sure that you have what's required for admission, because we won't be able to consider you if you don't have those required courses done. But beyond that, it's good to do additional ones. Also, Assist will have like non-selective majors as well and what you can be taking for those. So it's good to be looking it up regardless of whether or not your major is selective, so that you can see what you can be doing to prepare for your major. And tag is available for all of our majors, regardless of whether or not they're selective, other than those few that we mentioned, the computer science, the data science, and the business major. So steps to apply for tag. First, you want to be filling out that tab. So the sooner you can fill that out, the better. And that's going to be where you can actually do the tag submission. Before you do submit it, highly encourage you to meet with your community college counselor and or your UC Davis advisor to look over things to make sure that everything's on track. Make sure you submit it during that filing period. So anytime between September 1st and the 30th, you want to get that in. And then after we send you your tag decision in mid-November, review that and then go ahead and submit your UC application. And so that's going to be due by November 30th. Make sure that you include Davis and your major matches. Following that, you have your transfer academic update. And so that's in January, due by January 31st, where you log back into that UC application again, report your fall grades, let us know if anything's changed for spring. Changes are okay as long as all requirements are still met. So if you have a required course plan for the spring that you don't end up enrolling in, that's going to be a problem. But if you have, let's say, a course that's just an elective course and you switch it out for a different course, then that's fine. That's not an issue. Make sure that you fulfill all of the remaining coursework that's required and GPA as outlined in your tag agreement. So when we do send you that tag decision, we're going to let you know what those specific conditions are that we are holding you to. So now let's look at what the actual submission process is going to look like for you. So you'll go into your UC tab. You want to make sure that you thoroughly check through everything. Everything is accurate. You have all of your grades posted through summer. You have your classes that are in progress for fall, and you've indicated your plans for spring. So check everything, make sure everything is good to go. And then as you start the process to apply, it's going to ask you what your current community college is. And there you'll put in your primary school if you're attending multiple. And then when you're planning to transfer and the campus that you want to do your tag for. Finally, you'll input what your major is. And that's going to be the start of where you're doing your submission. It's going to give you a checklist after that. So make sure that you read through everything. You make sure that nothing's forgotten. Everything is good to go. And then you can click on that Start Tag Submission. When you do the tag submission, it is going to ask you if you are participating in UC Transfer Pathways or Pathways Plus. If you're not sure what those are, you can click on the links to find out more information about those programs. They're not required. They don't impact your tag. But if you're doing them, we're just collecting that information so we know more about what you've been doing along the way to prepare. So just go ahead and check either of those off if you are doing one of those things. There's also a space for additional comments. So if there is information in your tag application that you feel needs further explanation, you can put that information in here. If you don't have anything that you need to explain, you can just leave this blank. So it's not required that you put anything here. But if you do have additional information, this is where you would include that. Then it's going to give you your submission checklist. Make sure that you read through all of this and you know that you're doing everything that you need to do, and then check those boxes off. And finally, it's just going to show you once again which campus you're tagging to and the major, and give you the chance to look at those tag-specific requirements if you need to review them, and then you can submit. There's no cost to submitting the tag, so you're able to just move forward with submitting it. There's no fee that's applied. And then it's going to give you some survey information. So after that, you fill out the survey. Let us know any other campuses that you're planning to apply to as well. And then Once that's done, it's going to give you your confirmation. So your tag confirmation is going to tell you when you applied for tag, the campus, the major. For Davis, it'll show the college affiliation of the major as well, and when you submitted it. You'll still be able to log into your tag after you log into your TAP after you've submitted the tag, and it'll show you your status on your homepage. So you'll be able to see, okay, I've submitted my tag and it is currently under review. During the month of September, if you do need to withdraw your tag, you can. So let's say you realize you submitted a tag to one campus, but you changed your mind, you want to tag a different one, or maybe you don't end up meeting those requirements, and you want to submit to a different campus that you meet the requirements for. You can withdraw it and then resubmit it as long as it's still before September 30th. So if it's during the month of September, you can do that. Also, if you realize, oh no, I left this class off that I was supposed to put in, you can withdraw it, make an edit, and then resubmit. But once you hit September 30th has passed, then you can no longer make any changes. So make sure that if you do need to make a change, you're doing that during that September filing period. Hopefully, you have everything fully filled out and good to go when you submit, and there's nothing that no reason to withdraw it and make any changes, but there is an option to do that if you do have that come up. But just to note, when you do submit the UC application, once that's in, it's in. So you cannot withdraw the UC application and make changes. So make sure that that one is for sure accurate when you get that in. But for tag, you do have that ability to withdraw and resubmit if you need to. So here's what the UC application timeline looks like. It's going to open up for you in August. So the UC application is available in August. You can start working on it in advance. Then the time to submit the tag during the month of September. And then the time to submit your UC application is between October 1st and November 30th. But remember, if you do a tag for a campus that pre-evaluates like Davis, wait until you hear your tag decision, which is going to come around mid-November. October 1st through March 2nd is the time to submit your financial aid application. And then next step in the UC application is your transfer academic update. So the TAU that you want to get in by January 31st to log back into the UC application, let us know your fall grades, any changes to plans for spring. And then April is when you will receive admission decisions. So most campuses will release their admission decisions in April. Sometimes you might hear as early as March, but you'll definitely hear no later than the end of April. June 1st is the deadline to submit your statement of intent to register. So if you're admitted to a UC that you want to attend, you need to let us know no later than June 1st. And then July is going to be when all of your official documents are due. So July 1st is the official transcript deadline. And then if you have exam scores, those are going to be due July 15th. So here is a list of contact information that you can reach out to if you have questions about the process for tag. These are just some general contacts for you to reach out for each campus. So feel free to take a picture of that. And that wraps up the presentation portion of this. So thank you everyone for joining. We will stay on until 6 to continue to answer questions in the Q&A. So if you have more questions, feel free to stay with us up until 6 o'clock. But if you've gotten all of your questions answered, you are welcome to hop off now. But here's some more information for you in terms of contact information and ways to keep in touch with us through social media. So thank you everyone so much. I really appreciate you joining us tonight, and we'll stick around and help answer questions.